Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a final look at the Week 3 NFL slate on Draftkings. We're going to go quarterback through tight end, position by position, talk through each position, kind of talk about some of my favorite plays, what stands out to me this week, guys I'm looking to, as more optimal plays, guys that stand out just for their price tag, for their projected points. Also, we're going to talk about some guys that maybe are going to be a little bit lower owned that I do like at each position as well. We'll do that quarterback through tight end. But before we get started with the breakdown, guys, as always, I'd appreciate it if you would click that like button down below. If you're new to the channel here, make sure you do subscribe as well. We've been getting a lot of new users on the channel ever since NFL season started. I do appreciate all you guys, all you new users coming to the channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you turn on notifications so that way you do get notified every time I upload any new videos. You also do get notified every time I live stream. I will be live streaming on Sunday morning, probably around 11:30 Eastern. I'll be live on my YouTube channel talking through the slate with you guys. If you have any questions you need answered on Sunday, I can answer them in the live stream. So be sure to tune into that as well. But let's go ahead and start off at quarterback. Take a look at this slate. Take a final look. What stands out to me? I'm recording this video on Friday. So at the top here, you got Kyler Murray, 8,300, Patrick Mahomes, 8,200. Your usual suspects at the top. I think all these guys, basically from Russell Wilson up, all four of these top tier quarterbacks are all very solid options. I would say that my favorite, once again, is probably Kyler Murray. I mean, so far he's been the QB1 through 2 weeks. 34 DK points week 1, 38 DK points last week against Minnesota. Good matchup here against Jacksonville. Another game that projects to be pretty high scoring. This Arizona-Jacksonville game is coming in with one of the higher totals on the slate right now, coming in with a 52 total, which is the fourth highest on the slate, I do believe. Fourth highest on the slate. So this is going to be a game that we do want to get some exposure to. Kyler Murray's been an elite fantasy quarterback, really just ever since he's been in the league. And, this year, I don't think anything's going to change. He's going to be a guy that consistently puts up over 30 DK points, just has so much upside. He's a great passer. He's got elite rushing upside. At 8,300, he's expensive, but there's some value that we will talk about at running back, at receiver, that makes it relatively easy to get to Kyler Murray if you do want to pay up for him. And then you got Patrick Mahomes, also in a great game environment, also in a game that projects to be high scoring against the Chargers. For 8,200, I think Patrick Mahomes is a very solid option as well. Murray and Mahomes are my two favorite guys to pay up for this week. Lamar Jackson against the Lions. I don't mind Lamar, but I think I would put Kyler and Patrick Mahomes ahead of him, especially since I like their stacking options a little bit more. Lamar is one of those guys, if you want to stack him, you can. You can stack him with Marquise Brown or Mark Andrews, but you don't have to. He is one of those guys that can kind of do it himself. Last week, he had 37 DK points against KC, 107 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Like, Lamar Jackson can go out there and score 30, 35 DK points, and none of his pass catchers do well just because he's got that elite rushing upside. He doesn't throw the ball a ton. This is a matchup against the Lions where you're going to think the Ravens are going to be playing from ahead here. So we might see Lamar running the ball a lot more this week, especially later in the game. I don't know if this is going to be a game where he really has to throw the ball a ton, but the upside's definitely there. It's a good matchup against a bad Lions defense. Lamar's playable, but I would say that he's probably like my third favorite of these four. Russell Wilson, might even put him ahead of Lamar. Russell Wilson on the road against Minnesota. Another good game environment, another game with a high total. Second highest total on the slate right now is the Seattle-Minnesota game. You can't go wrong with Russell Wilson any week. I think, once again, he is a strong play at the top here. Really, all these quarterbacks at the top are good options pretty much every single week. I think Josh Allen might be the guy that gets a little bit overlooked. I think he might come in a little bit lower owned at home against Washington. Washington's got a really good defense. They're not a team I really like to pick on, but Josh Allen's an elite quarterback. He's an elite fantasy quarterback. He really hasn't had any big games yet this season. We know that's going to come, that's going to change at some point, though. Like, Josh Allen obviously has massive upside, but so far through 2 weeks, only 18 and 17 Draftkings points. That's definitely going to make him a little bit lower owned this week than some of these other top tier quarterbacks. He just hasn't produced at the same level that Mahomes and Kyler, Russ, like all these other guys have. So if you want to get a little bit different at the top, I don't mind going with Josh Allen. I think he'll be, in my player pool. I don't know if he's going to be like a staple of my lineups, but I definitely want to have Josh Allen in my player pool, especially if I'm playing a lot of lineups. He's going to, make a few lineups for me. But the mid-tier, it's been really strong, so far through 2 weeks. In week 3, once again, we got a lot of good options in the 6K range. This Tampa Bay Rams game's coming in with the highest total on the slate right now. So I think both Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford make for very good options in the mid-range. Justin Herbert, high total game against KC. 6,500. Talked about Justin Herbert a lot in my first look video. I was very high on Justin Herbert last week. Obviously, he didn't have that good of a game, only 19 DK points against the Cowboys. I think we're going to see a big game from Justin Herbert at some point. It could definitely come this week against KC in a game that projects to be high scoring. Also, the Chargers, as I think, 7-point dogs right now? Yes, 7-point dogs on the road. They're probably going to be throwing in this game. They're going to have to keep up with KC. For 6,500, Justin Herbert, Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, all these guys, man, are really, really good options in the mid-range. I think they all make for very good tournament plays. But I would say that my favorite mid-range quarterback is the guy in the middle there, Justin Herbert, 6,500. But a lot of good tournament options here. A lot of guys that you can get exposure to that are playing in really good game environments. And obviously, when we get to wide receiver, to tight end, we'll talk about some of the stacking options I like with these quarterbacks. They're pass catchers that you can go to. But even Kirk Cousins, I don't mind 6,300. We're going to talk about some of his receivers. KJ Osborne, I think, is projecting out as a really good value this week. So, if I'm getting a lot of exposure to KJ Osborne, I think I'm going to have some Kirk Cousins lineups. But I don't expect him to be a staple of my lineups this week. Value-wise, though, at quarterback, Daniel Jones, I think, makes some sense as a cheaper option. He's actually been really good so far this season. Been showing a lot of rushing upside. He's got 2 rushing touchdowns so far this year. 95 rushing yards last week against Washington. I think that's a little bit of an outlier, but Daniel Jones does have some scrambling upside. He's been decent, 5,800, good matchup at home against the Falcons. I don't mind Daniel Jones. If you're looking to get a little bit different at quarterback and you want to go cheap, he's definitely playable for me. Trevor Lawrence at home against Arizona. Again, that game projects to be very high scoring. It's got the 4th highest total on the slate right now with a 52 total. It's going to be a game where the Jags are probably playing from behind right now. Even at home, they're 7.5-point dogs. So we're going to see Trevor Lawrence forced to throw once again. He threw the ball 51 times week 1, 33 times week 2. This is probably going to be another game where we're going to have to see Trevor Lawrence throw the ball 35, 40 times. At 5,500, I definitely like Trevor Lawrence for value. I don't think he's going to get much ownership this week. And then Justin Fields is the last guy I want to mention for value. Tough matchup on the road against Cleveland, but he's super affordable. Justin Fields obviously is a dual threat quarterback. He's a guy that has scrambling upside. 5,200 is probably too cheap for someone that, can go out there and run for 50, 60 yards. We saw whenever Jalen Hurts made this, when he became the starter last year, he was super underpriced for the first week or two. Draftkings just didn't price him up to where he should be. I think Justin Fields is kind of the same thing. If he remains the starter, after this week and then next week, his price is going to slowly start to rise. I don't think he's going to be a $5,200 quarterback the entire season. We're definitely getting him at a discount right now. I don't know if DraftKings expected him to be the starter or not, but it's already been confirmed. He will start this game against Cleveland. Again, the matchup's not great. On the road against Cleveland is not the best spot for Justin Fields, but 5,200 for a dual threat quarterback, I do have interest in him as a cheaper option. I think he makes a lot of sense in cash games. I think he's going to be a pretty popular cash game quarterback, but again, he projects really well for his salary. I think he's going to get a good amount of ownership. Right now, his ownership, let's see what it's coming in at. It's coming in at 6%, so it's actually not that high. Only 6% projected ownership for Justin Fields. Quarterback ownership tends to be spread out anyway, but he is projecting out as a really good value. He's got a 19.4 DK point projection, which is, I believe, very high for a quarterback. Right now, he's got for the projections that I use, Justin Fields coming in with the second or third highest, coming in with the third highest QB value. So, yeah, hard not to like him at 5,200. Just a dual threat quarterback that cheap is rare to find. So I did want to mention him as a cheap option at this position. But I think that kind of does it for quarterback. Again, I'm trying to just get the quarterbacks that are, playing in high total games. So, Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford in the Tampa Bay LA game, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson in the Seattle Minnesota game, Mahomes, Herbert, those guys, Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence. That's kind of where I'm looking to get my exposure to at quarterback. And then, Justin Fields I have interest in for cheap. Lamar I think is a good quarterback you can use naked if you want to play him just by himself, or if you want to stack him, you can do that as well. But really just these high total games, these games with 50 plus totals, this is where we want to get most of our quarterback exposure. I don't expect to have much, Zach Wilson or Teddy Bridgewater or Jameis or Mac Jones. I'm not playing the quarterbacks in those low total games that are projected to be, not very high scoring. We just don't want to get much exposure there. We want to focus on the games that are going to be high scoring, that are projected to shoot out. So that's kind of where I'm looking to get my quarterback exposure this week in my tournament lineups at least. But moving on to the running back position, so it's a little bit of a different week this week. No Christian McCaffrey, not on the main slate. So Derrick Henry, our most expensive running back, 8,600 on DK. Look, Derrick Henry went absolutely nuclear last week. He got off to a really slow start, but had a big second half, cranked it on in the second half against Seattle. Finished with 182 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Also got 6 targets, 6 catches, and that's really good to see. We're seeing Derrick Henry a little bit more involved in the passing game. 4 targets week 1, 6 targets last week in week 2. We weren't really seeing this, last year. He was only getting maybe 1 or 2 targets a game. They really weren't utilizing him that much in the passing game, but that's kind of changed so far this year. I'm hoping that continues rest of season. I think Derrick Henry needs to be a guy that gets just 4, 5, 6 targets a week. You don't have to use him a ton, but at least throw him a couple screen passes, get him some dump offs. He's such an elusive running back. He's just so powerful. Just get him in space, get him the ball in space, run some screens for him, just get him a few targets. If he can get those 5, 6 targets a week, that's going to make him very valuable on DraftKings, way more valuable than he used to be. The reason I used to not have as much interest in Derrick Henry on DK was just because he didn't get that much usage in the passing game. So in order for him to really put up a ceiling game, he was going to have to run for 150 yards and multiple touchdowns. And obviously Derrick Henry can do that every week. But some of these other guys like Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, they get so much usage in the passing game that they don't need to run for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns to get there because they can catch 5, 6 balls, for 50, 60 yards, and that's 12 DraftKings points alone. But it's been good to see Henry getting usage in the passing game at home against the Colts, 8,600. Obviously, he is a top projected option at the running back position. I think he makes a lot of sense this week. I do prefer Dalvin Cook, though, if I am paying up at running back. Now, we will need to keep an eye on his status right now, so as I said at the beginning, guys, I'm recording this video on Friday afternoon. We don't have Friday practice reports out yet, but Dalvin Cook did not practice on Thursday, so this is a little bit of a concern, but I'm assuming, we'll have an update on it. We're going to know his status probably by Sunday morning, if he's going to be good to go or not, but I'd assume that Dalvin Cook plays. We will need to keep an eye on this. If he's good to go, though, and if he fully participates in practice on Friday, 8,400, I think Dalvin Cook is my favorite pay-up running back this week. He's kind of the guy that I'm looking to at the top. At home against Seattle, good game environment, high total. Dalvin Cook just continuing to get monster usage as we would expect. 26 touches week 1, 24 touches last week. Gets good usage in the passing game, gets all the goal line work. He really just checks all the boxes. You can't go wrong with Derrick Henry, but I probably would prefer Dalvin Cook if I am paying up at the running back position. Now, Alvin Kamara, he's going to be super, super low owned. Right now, Alvin Kamara is only coming in, let's see, what's his... I'm about to check and see what his ownership projection is. So right now, Alvin Kamara is coming in with 10% projected ownership on DraftKings. I don't think it's going to be that high. I think he's going to be a lot lower than that. I expect Alvin Kamara will probably be single-digit owned this week. He's been not great through 2 games. The Saints offense, week 1 they were really good, but Kamara didn't really get a ton of touchdowns. I would say he only scored 1 touchdown week 1. Obviously, they blew out Green Bay, so he didn't play much in the fourth quarter. And then last week against Carolina, they just looked really, really bad. Kamara, 8 carries for 5 yards. He could not get anything going on the ground. On the road against New England, I would say is not the most ideal spot for Alvin Kamara, but I think he's going to be super low owned. If you want to get a little bit different in tournaments, you can play Alvin Kamara at the top, but I would say that I do feel better about Derrick Henry. I feel way better about Dalvin Cook, those other guys. But Kamara will be low owned, so I did want to mention him at the top here. But then some of these other mid-range options, the mid-range at running back also is very strong this week. Najee Harris at home against Cincinnati. Najee Harris just getting massive usage, playing basically all the snaps. He played every single snap in week 1. He played 95% of the snaps in week 2. Been getting good volume both through the run and through the air. 5 targets last week, 5 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown. Also had 10 carries for 38 yards. Cincinnati, the Bengals have always been a pretty bad run defense. They've always been a team that you can run on. So I do have interest in Najee Harris in the mid-range. And then as you can see by the thumbnail, Saquon Barkley, 6,500. Also a guy we're going to have to keep an eye on. But it looks like right here that he is practicing Friday. So we did just get an update that Barkley is practicing Friday. So should be good to go. If he practiced Friday, that makes me assume that he will play come Sunday. 6,500 at home against the Falcons. Great spot here for Saquon Barkley. Obviously, week 1, we didn't have much interest in him against Denver. There just wasn't enough confidence in his workload. He only got 11 touches. They said they were going to limit him week 1. He was going to be on a pitch count. But then week 2 against Washington, he got back to a full workload basically. He played, I think, over 80% of the snaps. Last week against Washington, he got 15 touches. Yeah, played 84% of the snaps in week 2 after only playing 48% in week 1 against Denver. I'm assuming we're going to get close to a fully healthy Saquon this week. He's going to probably play over 80% of the snaps, should get 15 to 20 touches. The matchup is great at home against Atlanta. It's definitely the best matchup that Saquon has had so far this season, and the price tags come way down. Normally, we don't get a fully healthy Saquon this cheap at $6,500. Normally, Saquon is like $7,500, $8K. The price tags come way down. I'm buying in on Saquon this week. I think he looks like a really good option in the mid-range. For sure, one of my favorite plays at the running back position. And on Prize Picks, they are the sponsor of this video, guys. I do want to give a shout out to Prize Picks. Right now, their projection for Saquon Barkley is currently 15 fantasy points. Prize Picks is very similar to DK fantasy point scoring. Only difference is that on Prize Picks, you don't get like the 100-yard bonus. You don't get the 300-yard bonus or whatever. But 15 fantasy points for Saquon. I do think he goes over that, or I think he goes over that projection. I like the over on Saquon Barkley. You can go and tell me on that pick for Prize Picks. We are going to talk about another pick I do like for this week. But if you guys want to check out Prize Picks, you want to look at their full week 3 board, you want to see all that they have to offer, all the projections they have available. Very simple. You just pick the over or the under, whether you think a player goes over or under their projection. You can make up to 5 picks. You can win up to 10x your money. If you want to sign up for Prize Picks, guys, make sure to use promo code NOAH, link down below in the description, or just type in that code whenever you do sign up, and you will get your first deposit matched up to $100. So if you sign up with my code, you deposit $100, Prize Picks will match that. They'll give you an additional $100 to play with. But even if you sign up, deposit $50, they'll match that. They'll give you $50 additional dollars. If you sign up and deposit $30, they'll match that, give you an additional $30. So whenever you do deposit, they will match that up to $100, and then you can check out everything that Prize Picks offers. You can make some of the picks for this week 3 slate. Check out their board. Prize Picks, guys, they are the sponsor of this video, so I did want to give a quick shout out to them. But again, going back to DK, the mid-range at running back, very, very strong. Najee Harris, Saquon Barkley, Chris Carson, a workhorse back in a good game environment against Minnesota, 6,400. Joe Mixon, tough matchup on the road against Pittsburgh, but he's just getting massive volume so far. 29 carries, 4 targets, 33 total touches in week 1, 21 touches in week 2. I'm pretty sure he's been playing like a ton of the snaps as well. Like right now, he's their workhorse for Cincinnati, and I think when he's healthy, he's going to be a workhorse back. Yeah, 78% of the snaps for Joe Mixon week 1, 84% in week 2. Tough matchup, but going to get a ton of volume, so I did want to mention Joe Mixon in that mid-range. If Dalvin Cook does not wind up playing, again, I think Cook will play come Sunday, but if he doesn't, Alexander Mattison for $6K. Obviously, DraftKings took the, they took the right move and they priced up Mattison just in case Cook were to miss. So we're not getting like Mattison, he's not like a free square or anything, but $6K, he would still be a good option because we've seen whenever Dalvin Cook misses games, Alexander Mattison is the guy that kind of takes over that backfield, and he would probably become their number one kind of workhorse running back. I don't know if he'd get the same amount of touches that Dalvin Cook would get, but he'll get close to it. So I did want to mention Mattison at $6K if Cook were to miss. Obviously, on Sunday morning in the live stream, we can touch more on this, because we'll have more news on Dalvin Cook by then. But then getting to the 5K range at running back, DeAndre Swift in a game where Baltimore is probably going to be playing from ahead and Detroit's going to be playing from behind. This is the kind of game script we want for DeAndre Swift. He's just getting so much usage in the passing game. You want him to be playing from behind because he's going to get 6, 7, 8 targets. He got 11 targets week 1, 5 targets last week. 5,800, going to be super low owned. I think if you're playing Lamar Jackson, maybe you run it back with a guy like DeAndre Swift. I don't mind doing that in tournaments. I did want to mention DeAndre Swift in the 5K range. Mike Davis should get, good volume. I know Cordell Patterson kind of had a big game last week, but Mike Davis still got 16 touches. He was very, very heavily utilized in the passing game. He's been heavily utilized in the passing game so far through 2 weeks. For 5,100 in a good matchup against the Giants, I think Mike Davis as a cheaper value running back does make a lot of sense this week. And then I think the standout value at the running back position, right now he's coming in with a good amount of ownership. I didn't think he was going to be that popular, beginning of the week, but it looks like he is going to pick up a lot of ownership. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's projecting out as a really good value. He's coming in with a little bit over 20% projected ownership on DraftKings. He's going to be popular, but for 4,800 in a good matchup against the Chargers and what is a good game environment, high total game, you can't go wrong with Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week at this price point. I know he's not been good this year. Hasn't been very efficient either. Hasn't scored any touchdowns, but I think we're going to see some positive regression coming for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. When you're the number one running back in a Patrick Mahomes offense, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for you to catch balls, to score touchdowns. With how efficient this Chiefs offense is, the opportunity is going to be there for CEH. It's just a matter of if he can be efficient with his touches, if he can finally get into the end zone. The one concern with CEH is that it seems like whenever the Chiefs get down to the goal line, they never run the ball. Like, they always throw it whenever they get to the goal line, which is obviously not what we want if we're playing Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But for 4,800, super cheap, a guy that gets utilized in the passing game. I know he didn't get any volume last week, but normally Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to see 4, 5, 6 targets a week. Good matchup, high total game. I know the Chargers have actually been really bad against the run so far this year. It's obviously only been 2 games, but I'm pretty sure they have allowed the most rushing yards per game to opposing running backs this season. So sneaky good spot for CEH. For 4,800, he is a top value at the running back position. I think in cash games, you're definitely playing CEH. I think in tournaments, you can still play him. Just kind of understand that he will get a lot of ownership, so it makes sense to maybe get a little bit unique with the rest of your lineup if you are playing a popular Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But that's probably it for running back. If I'm going cheap this week at this position, CEH is the guy that stands out here. But let's go ahead and move on to wide receiver now. So at wide receiver, it's very similar to quarterback. At the wide receiver position, I just try and get exposure to whatever quarterback I'm playing. I try and stack them with their top tier receivers. So, my Patrick Mahomes lineups, I like going to Tyreek Hill in those. My Kyler Murray lineups, I want to get DeAndre Hopkins in those. I do want to mention that DeAndre Hopkins did not practice on Thursday. I don't think he practiced on Wednesday either, and it looks like he didn't participate in the open portion of Friday's practice. So this is another kind of injury we're going to have to keep an eye on. I assume that Hopkins plays. He's been one of these guys that, even though he won't practice, he'll still play just in the past. But this will be something to monitor. I assume Hopkins is in there. We'll talk about some of the other Cardinals receivers, though, that probably would benefit if Hopkins were to sit, but he should play this week. If you're playing Kyler Murray, obviously you can stack him up with DeAndre Hopkins. Steph Diggs, I think, is probably going to be like the lowest owned of the top tier wide receivers right now. Let's see what his projection's coming in at. So he's, of all the top tier receivers in terms of ownership, Steph Diggs, let's see, he's coming in with a ownership, go to wide receiver, 10% ownership on DK, which is actually a little bit higher than I thought it would be. But, Josh Allen, I don't think gets a ton of ownership this week. So if you want to stack him with Steph Diggs, obviously you can go that route. Right now, the lowest projected owned top tier wide receiver is DeAndre Hopkins. That could just be because of, his questionable status and whatnot. But right now, DeAndre Hopkins, with the ownership projections that I look at, he's coming in with less than 2% projected ownership. I don't think that's going to hold, but that is kind of interesting that Hopkins is coming in so low owned. Tyreek Hill, though, projecting out as the highest kind of top tier receiver, and it makes sense. I mean, Tyreek Hill, just insane upside. Obviously, he had a bad game week 2, but you look what he did week 1 against Cleveland. No one can beat a defense like Tyreek Hill. It seems like this dude just always gets open. The Chargers have a solid secondary, but again, this is a high total game. Should be high scoring. Tyreek is matchup proof. He's probably the top projected play at the wide receiver position if you can get to him. But it really, when it comes down to these top tier wide receivers, I think you're just kind of playing whichever one fits with your quarterback. You're stacking up whatever receiver you play at the top. It's probably going to correlate with whatever quarterback you play. But you can't go wrong with any of these top tier receivers. Now in this mid-range, again, mid-range very strong at wide receiver. You got Cooper Kupp, who's just been balling out through 2 weeks, getting massive volume, 10 and 11 targets, 26, 39 DK points. The price tag's starting to get up there. He's almost 7K now, 6,800. But it's a good matchup against Tampa Bay. The way you beat this Tampa Bay defense is through the air. They're one of the toughest teams to run on, but you can beat them through the air for sure. This is a game that should be high scoring. Cooper Kupp is a really good play. Once again, he still projects out as like a top value for his salary. The ownership or the projections that I use that I look at, he's projecting out as the top wide receiver DK value. So just his point projection based on his salary still projects very highly. So Cooper Kupp's a really good option once again. Keenan Allen, I like once again this week as well. I was high on Keenan Allen last week, him and Justin Herbert. Obviously, Keenan Allen, he had a solid game, 17 DK points, 4 catches for 108 yards, but I was hoping for a little bit more in a good matchup against Dallas. But I'm going right back to Keenan Allen this week, especially in my Justin Herbert lineups. I am going to stack him up with Keenan Allen, get some exposure to this high total game. Definitely like him at 6,600. A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of those guys. If you want to play Ryan Tannehill, stack them up with one of those two. I'm fine doing that in tournaments. The Tampa Bay receivers, I do have a lot of interest in. So Mike Evans, 6,300. Chris Godwin, 6,100. We've already gotten news that Antonio Brown has been placed on the COVID list, and it doesn't seem like Antonio Brown's going to play Sunday. that'll be something we'll have to monitor. But right now, I assume AB is going to be out. And with AB out, I mean, the target share for this Tampa Bay offense, it's already pretty condensed. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, AB, Gronk, like those are the four guys that really get most of the targets from Tom Brady. Now without AB, it should be a lot of Mike Evans, a lot of Chris Godwin, and a lot of Gronk. And Mike Evans, 6,300, Godwin, 6,100. I like both these guys a lot. Now, I think Mike Evans will probably see a lot of Jalen Ramsey. I think Ramsey might actually shadow Mike Evans. So I would say looking at the matchup, I would say it's a better matchup for Chris Godwin, but Evans should be heavily targeted this week. We know he's always a threat to score touchdowns, especially in the red zone. I like him a lot, in that high total game against the Rams. And then Chris Godwin, 6,100, a lot of interest in Chris Godwin. I think he should be able to avoid Jalen Ramsey for the most part. And without Antonio Brown, the target share for Chris Godwin and for Mike Evans should just be even higher. These guys are already heavily targeted on a weekly basis, but that should be even higher this week. We know this Tampa Bay offense, they like to throw the ball a lot in a game that projects to be very high scoring. We should see probably double-digit targets for both Godwin and Evans. So I want to hop back over to Prize Picks. I do want to touch on the projection for Chris Godwin. Right now, he's coming in with only a 16.5-point projection on Prize Picks. I think he definitely goes over that. I like the over on Chris Godwin's fantasy point projection. Again, without Antonio Brown in a high-scoring game, 16.5 fantasy points, that's too low for Chris Godwin. He went over that week 1. He almost went over that week 2. He probably is going to go over that this week in what should be a high-scoring game, and especially with the target share increasing for Godwin this week without AB. He goes over that, in my opinion. I do like the over on Chris Godwin's fantasy points. So these two picks, over on Barkley fantasy points, over on Godwin fantasy points, those are two picks you can tail me on Prize Picks if you want to sign up, and make sure to use promo code Noah when you do sign up for Prize Picks, and you can check out their entire week 3 board, what they have available. But that probably does it for like the 6K range. There's some other guys that are playable here, but I just kind of want to keep it condensed to like my core options. Mainly keep it condensed to the quarterbacks I'm playing and the receivers, obviously. So obviously I have interest in Tom Brady. That's going to make me have interest in Evans and Godwin for sure. But then in the 5K range, Robert Woods I think is the clear standout play in the 5K range, 5,700. Cooper Kupp's a great play this week, and he's projected to be pretty popular. I think to get a little bit different, you can definitely play Robert Woods. Now, Robert Woods is picking up some ownership as well. He's also projecting out as a very high value on DK. He's coming in with 20% ownership, projecting out as the 4th highest just value points per dollar wise. 5,700 in a good game environment, high total game. We haven't really seen Robert Woods break out yet, but we know Robert Woods can go out there and go for 100+ yards, multiple touchdowns. He's still been getting good volume as well. Obviously not the volume that Cooper Kupp's been getting, but he's also a lot cheaper than Cooper Kupp. So for 5,700, I like Robert Woods a lot in the 5K range. Christian Kirk, especially if DeAndre Hopkins were to surprisingly not play this week, Christian Kirk, 5,400 is a very strong play. I like some Odell Beckham this week. It looks like Odell is going to make his debut this week against the Bears. Matchup probably not great. Game environment's not great, but we've already talked about Justin Fields and how I do like Justin Fields as a value quarterback. I think in my Justin Fields lineups, I am definitely going to look to use Odell Beckham as a run back in those lineups. Without Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham should be, when Baker Mayfield looks to throw, he should be looking for Odell Beckham because he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver this week, especially with Jarvis Landry not playing. As long as we get confirmation that Odell's going to be full go, that he's not going to be on like any sort of pitch count or anything, I like him a lot at 5,300. I liked Odell weeks 1 and 2. Obviously, he didn't play those weeks, but week 3 looks like it's going to be Odell's time. 5,300, too cheap for the talent of this guy. I know he didn't do much last year, but I'm buying in on Odell Beckham this year. And at 5,300, I do have a lot of interest in him as a cheaper wide receiver option that you can use. Maybe in like lineups where you have Justin Fields, you want to run it back with Odell. But then going down like 5K and below, starting to look at some value. Rondale Moore, been great in this Arizona offense. He's been getting good volume, 5 targets week 1, 8 targets week 2. The price tag's starting to creep up a little bit. At 5K, I'm a little bit sticker shock there. I'm not running to roster Rondale Moore now that he's 5K, but I think he will be a consistent part of this offense. I think he will be someone that gets 5, 6, 7 targets a week. At 5K, definitely have some interest in him. And obviously, if DeAndre Hopkins were to surprisingly not play, that would make me like Rondale Moore a lot more. He would project a lot better in that case. Marvin Jones, 4,900, just continues to be a target monster. 20 targets through 2 games, 4,900. Love stacking up Trevor Lawrence and Marvin Jones. I think Marvin Jones will be a pretty popular value receiver, but I don't think Trevor Lawrence gets much ownership at quarterback. So if you want to stack up Trevor Lawrence and Marvin Jones together. I definitely like doing that in tournaments. And then obviously you can run it back with one of those Arizona receivers, whether it's Hopkins, Kurt, Rondale Moore, whichever you choose. 4,900 for the target volume that he's getting. He's been the number one receiver for the Jaguars so far. He is a clear value at wide receiver, in my opinion. Definitely one of my favorite plays below 5K this week. But there's a lot of guys down here that you could look to. Laviska Shenault is a way to get different. Marvin Jones probably going to be a pretty popular value receiver, so Laviska Shenault will not be that popular. For 4,400, you could definitely look to him as a way to get different in tournaments. But there's a couple cheap options I wanted to mention. McCole Hardman, 3,900. He hasn't been getting much volume. Did get 8 targets last week, only 3 targets the week before. But we know McCole Hardman is kind of a deep play guy. He's a big play guy. He can, catch a long touchdown. 3,900, just a way to get some exposure to that Chargers-Chiefs game with not much ownership. I don't think McCole Hardman is picking up much ownership at all this week. Let's see. He's actually getting 13% projected ownership, which is a little bit higher than I thought, but he's projecting really well, just points per dollar wise for his salary. 3,900, probably too cheap for McCole Hardman in what is projected to be one of the highest scoring games on the slate. Little way to get different if you want to stack up the Chiefs. Obviously, a lot of people are going to look to Kelsey. They're going to look to Tyreek Hill. Hardman is a way to get a little bit different. I think makes some sense at 3,900. Then the 2 other value receivers I wanted to mention this week, KJ Osborne, 3,500. Going to be pretty popular. I think if people are looking, in cash games to go cheaper receiver, this is going to be the guy they go to. So if you are playing cash games and you're looking for a value receiver, Osborne's probably the guy you want to look to. He will be the most popular of all the cheap receivers, but it's hard not to like him. I mean, he's playing, a good amount of the snaps. He's been their wide receiver 3. He's been their slot receiver so far for, this season for the Vikings. Last week in week 2, he played only 59% of the snaps, but he played 81% in week 1. Should be a guy that's going to be on the field for, 60 to 80% of the snaps. 3,500, been getting good volume, 15 targets through 2 games. He is a top value for sure. I don't know if he's going to continue to put up these 14, 20-point games like he has the last 2 weeks, but if he's going to be on the field for 70, 80% of the snaps in a high-scoring game against Seattle at a $3,500 price point, it would be, I think if KJ Osborne was 5K, we wouldn't have any interest in him, but he's still 3,500. He's still super cheap. Draftkings didn't really raise his price at all. So that's what makes me really like KJ Osborne as a value receiver this week at 3,500. And then the last guy I want to mention is Scotty Miller. I think Scotty Miller is going to kind of fill in for Antonio Brown, assuming that Antonio Brown does not play this week. Scotty Miller will kind of step in as that wide receiver 3, that slot receiver. I don't think he gets massive volume or anything, but for 3,100, probably sees 4, 5, 6 targets. Obviously in a good Tampa Bay offense, and an offense that throws the ball a lot. Tom Brady's probably going to throw the ball 40, 45 times in this game. There's definitely opportunity for Scotty Miller in that case. And at 3,100, he's super cheap. Probably nobody's going to play him. He's coming in with super low ownership right now. I think last time I looked, he was getting no ownership at all. Yeah, literally less than 1% projected ownership for Scotty Miller. So 3,100, assuming the AB is out, I do want to mention Scotty Miller as a cheap value option that you could go to. But that does it for wide receiver. Let's quickly hit on tight end, guys, before we do end the video. So at tight end, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller at the top. Can't go wrong with either one of these guys. If I'm paying up at tight end, Travis Kelce is definitely the guy that I'm playing at the top. But Kelce and Waller are both very strong plays. Both are going to get massive volume on a weekly basis. I think the touchdown equity for Kelce is a lot higher. I think Kelce is a lot more likely to score a touchdown. But Darren Waller is a really good play as well. But then you got Gronk at 5,500. Gronk's been great through 2 games. I've kind of been off of Gronk so far this year, and it's burned me. He scored 2 touchdowns week 1. He scored 2 touchdowns last week against Atlanta. He's kind of touchdown or bust. Gronk's not a guy that's going to catch 6, 8 passes. I know he did in week 1, but normally Gronk's going to be a guy that gets 4 or 5 receptions. You kind of have to hope that he scores at least 1, if not 2 touchdowns. But his target share this week, at least, if Antonio Brown is out, we might see the target share increase a little bit for Rob Gronkowski. He's expensive at 5,500, but at least playable, especially because it is a good game environment and a high total game against the Rams. TJ Hawkinson just going to continue to get good volume every single week. This Lions team, they're going to be playing from behind every single week. 20 total targets through 2 games for Hawkinson. Against Baltimore, another game where you expect the Lions to be playing from behind. We should see close to double-digit targets for Hawkinson at 5,200. Very, very good option in that 5K range at tight end. Kyle Pitts, I like a lot at 4,900, especially in maybe my Saquon Barkley lineups. Look to run it back with someone on the Atlanta side. I think Kyle Pitts, especially at the tight end position, that's usually always the toughest position to fill to find good options at. Pitts at 4,900, I do like for value. You know, they're utilizing him so much. He's on the field a ton. They're lining him up a lot, and as a wide receiver, he's basically a wide receiver for 4,900. And he feels tight end. So definitely like Kyle Pitts as a value option. And then Tyler Higbee burned me last week, but again, he played every single snap. He played every single snap week 1. He played every single snap last week. I know he only got 1 target, but you're getting an every down tight end for 4K in a good matchup, in a good game environment, and what projects to be the highest scoring game on the slate. Tyler Higbee was popular last week. I think he's going to be popular again. But at 4K, I usually always look to save some salary at tight end. Higbee's for sure one of my favorite values this week. But there's good plays up and down. You got Kelsey, Waller, Gronk, Hawkinson, Pitts, Higbee. I think this is where I'm mainly looking at tight end. There's some other guys you could go to here, but tight end's a position, man. God, it's like the top tier guys are just so much better than everyone else. Like tight end, I try not to punt this position just because a lot of the guys down here just don't have the upside. You're going to need to find guys that at least can score touchdowns, which is why I'm looking to Kelsey, Waller, Gronk, Hawkinson, Pitts, even Higbee. Like these are the kind of guys I'm looking to at tight end this week. Normally my tight end pool is pretty condensed. I don't think I'm going to have exposure to too many tight ends outside of the guys that we mentioned. So yeah, that does it for the breakdown, guys. We hit on basically all the playable options, at least like the main core guys that I'm looking to, quarterback through tight end. Obviously, we didn't touch on every single player. If I were to talk about every single player, this video would be 3 hours long. So I just wanted to hit on the main guys that I was interested in. Obviously, if there's any guys that you want, my thoughts on, you can obviously ask those in the live stream on Sunday morning, or you can comment them down below. I do try and read every single comment. I try and reply to every single comment. So let me know down in the comment section if there's any plays that I missed that you want my thoughts on, or if you just want to leave some of your favorite plays for this week 3 slate. Comment those down below, but hit the like button, guys, before you do get out of here. Hit that subscribe button as well, and make sure to check out Prize Picks. They are the sponsor of this video. Sign up for Prize Picks. Use promo code NOAH. When you do sign up, you can tell me on the few picks that I made in this video. You can go make some picks for yourself as well. Just make sure to use that promo code NOAH so that way you do get your first deposit matched up to $100 over on Prize Picks. But best of luck this week, guys. Tune into the live stream Sunday morning. I'll be live answering all your questions, talking through the slate once again with you guys. I hope to see you guys there Sunday morning in the live stream. But good luck, and we'll see you then. Peace.